I'm John Batchelor. Larry Kudlow, CNBC, and Kudlow Radio on the Weekend is here with me. Late news from Washington. This is William Malden filing for the Wall Street Journal. The White House on Tuesday threatened to veto a crucial trade bill if it contains legislation with binding punishments for currency manipulation, the main point of contention between President Obama and congressional critics. Treasury Secretary Jake Lew called the bipartisan currency measure a poison pill. Larry, is this late in the game, or did we expect this fencing after all the Sturm and Drang over the trade bill in the Senate last week?
The currency amendment, John, has been expected. And I think, I don't know, I may be wrong, but I think Mitch McConnell's idea was to put it on the table and let it be voted down. I happen to agree with Jack Lew on this one, and it's a really lousy idea. It's put up by protectionists who do not want any trade deals, labor unions in particular. But
so this is sabotage.
Oh, yeah. Senator Jeff Sessions and the restrictionist wing. Yeah, this is a sabotage approach, and it's aimed at China. Mm-hmm. It's aimed at China, and China has stopped. I mean, the yuan's gone up 40% in the last several years. It's a stupid idea.
The observation, I know it's just ironic here at the edge of history. This is the Republican Party working with the President of the United States. Does it gain any attention at all, Larry? Is this part of the conversation in Washington that the President is working with his rivals in Congress and they're all good at it?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, yeah, there's been conversation. Look at, people have said, gee whiz, gosh, look what we could have done.
Right.
And here's Obama, in a way, not handling it very well because, John, he's not just opposing his trade opponents. He's trashing them the way he used to trash Republicans,
right,
including Elizabeth Warren. But she's not alone. So he's behaving, I think, rather poorly, even while the GOP is on his side. Look, I'm just going to say, I believe that this trade bill is really good for economic growth, okay? Tariffs will come down. Tariffs are tax rates, John. So that means tax rates will come down. And if you tax something less, you'll get more of it. And therefore, we will have more trade, more exports, more manufacturing. Do you know American manufacturing exports hit an all-time record high? Now, you don't hear that story from some of the protectionists, but we're doing great. Why shouldn't American consumers be able to buy the best available goods at the lowest possible prices anywhere in the world? Why should we deprive them of that choice, Senator Chuck Schumer, I ask?
We go from the poison pill in Washington to the, I'm not going to do it, but the word is the pill in Iowa. Mrs. Clinton today, commenting on the trade bill, asked directly, Larry, I need a translation here, because it looks like she's speaking in English. When asked directly which side she supports, whether Elizabeth Warren, Harry Reid, and the bulk of the Democrats in the Senate, or the Republicans and the President of the United States, Mrs. Clinton says, I've been very clear on this. I've said over and over again, any trade deal that I would support must increase jobs, must increase wages, must give us more economic competitive power around the world. I want to judge the final agreement. I have been for trade agreements. I have been against trade agreements. End quote. Larry, this needs a translation because she's filibustering me, and I got lost about the second sentence. What's she saying?
I think she's saying, I'm going to lead from behind. I think that's what she's saying. I think. So
she's on a listening tour?
She's on a listening tour. I think, John, she's saying, look, I'm ahead in the Democratic Party primary by 70, 80 points, so why should I take a risk? I mean, that's been her whole strategy, whether it's emails or trade or Sidney Blumenthal.
But it's her party that's opposing the bill, as I understand it. And she's telling her party, I'm not going to support you, and I'm not going to tell you what my opinion is, and you're going to vote for me anyway.
I think so. I mean, her husband, by the way, was a very good free trader. And Bill Clinton and Al Gore led the way to complete the NAFTA free trade bill by defeating and out-debating Ross Perot. So I give Bill Clinton a whole lot of credit for that. I give Mrs. Clinton zero, in fact, minus credit for the terrible stand she's taking. Anytime you lower tariffs, I'll repeat it again, She says, I want to see how it affects jobs. Anytime you lower tariffs, you're cutting taxes on trade, and that's good for jobs. It's good for production, and it's great for consumers and families, you know? And she ought to know that. A former senator from New York. Why shouldn't consumers have a chance, John, to buy the best dresses, sneakers, T-shirts, baseball hats, whatever, at the lowest available price? Why shouldn't we take advantage of this massive export market developing out there in the rest of the world? It's just nuts to insulate ourselves into some protectionist corner. That's really what she's doing. Now, she could come out later and say, I was for it all the time. You know how she does, but there's no leadership here. That's why I call it leading from behind. No leadership.
Banks, they also will prosper from the deal, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And you have a column in the National Review Online pointing out an ironic point that you don't know unless you're inside the game, that no one's defending banks. Why not, Larry?
You know, banks have just been everybody's tar boy, everybody's piñata. And it goes back to the crash of 2008. And look, I'm not going to defend all banks all the time. They made mistakes. They made risk management mistakes. But on the other hand, at some point, you have to, I don't know, come to a truce or say enough is enough. You can't have a good functioning economy without banks, and that means large banks, and that means regional banks, and that means medium-sized banks. Barney Frank's bill, Dodd-Frank, is over-regulating banks, so loans have been much lower than they should be.
And driving business to London.
Yeah, I mean, right. It's what we're doing. It's politically hospitable for Republicans and Democrats to keep bashing banks, and they are doing it. But what I pointed out, John, is not just the economics of this, but the politics. In Britain, the Labour Party trashed banks and got killed. And so there may be a lesson there. Sometimes the Brits lead us in politics, and we will follow. So I'm saying, all right, enough already. Enough already. Let's not have unaffordable mortgages without documentation. Let's not have zero down payments, okay? Let's not have Fannie and Freddie go back to where they were and run the entire
Isn't
house.
Mrs. Clinton going to run against banks, Larry? That's all the signs that we're getting from the Democratic Party.
Yeah,
They're going to make the Republicans the bankers.
She has already, and some Republicans have been trashing banks, and it's very ironic, almost incredible, John, how much money she gets from Wall Street, and now she's bashing banks. I mean, come on.
Because the banks are without friends, except for Larry Kudlow in the National Review Online, does it show on Wall Street? Are people investing in them again?
Yes. That's a great part of the story. In fact, this little mini rally we're having, banks are leading the way. Year to date, banks are leading the overall market. Their profits beat the street estimates. And so despite all these incredible obstacles, they're managing to hang on. You know, John, it's like any other profession, okay? There's some bad apples in that barrel, but that doesn't mean the whole barrel is bad. And that's my point about banks.
Larry Kudlow, CNBC and Kudlow Radio on the Weekend. I'm John Batchelor. This is The John Batchelor Show.